Pour out. Despejando.
He spends every lunchtime pouring out his emotional problems to me and expects me to find a solution.
Descarregava.
I listened while he poured out his anger and frustration.
Abriu o coração.
She poured out her heart in the online diary.
Extravasei meus pensamentos.
I poured my thoughts out on paper in an attempt to rationalize my feelings.
Despejar.
The man looked about to fall apart, ready to pour out a confession.
Revelou.
She poured out all her troubles to him.
Descarregou.
She poured out her troubles to me over a cup of coffee.
Despejar.
Always shake the bottle before you pour out the medicine.
Colocar pouco de água.
Would you pour some water out for me, please?
Servindo.
Larry was pouring out some drinks.
Serviu o chá.
Carefully and slowly he poured the tea out.
Jorrou.
The water poured out of the broken pipe and flooded the basement.
Esguichou.
The pipe split and the water just poured out.
Jorrando.
Blood was pouring out of the wound, but he looked calm enough.
Jorrando para fora.
I set up my food stall in the parking lot near the end of the game because I knew people would come pouring out once it was finished.
Jorrando.
Students poured out of the school the moment the final bell sounded before summer vacation.
Se precipitaram para fora da escola. Jorrando para fora.
At the end of the game, people poured out of the stadium for an hour.
Close in on. Se aproximando.
Police were closing in on the two men.
Se aproximando.
The advancing soldiers closed in on the town. Enemy troops began closing in at dawn.
Chegando perto.
The patrol car was rapidly closing in on us.
Chegando perto.
The fire was closing in on their neighborhood.
Chegou.
The weather has now closed in, so an attempt on the summit is unlikely.
Chegando.
November was quickly closing in.
Unlikely. Improvável. Se apertando ao redor dela.
She felt as though the walls of the room were closing in on her.
Chegando perto de mim.
When I'm in a small space for too long, I start to feel as though the walls are closing in on me.
Apertando.
I procrastinated, and now the deadline for my paper is really closing in on me.
E apertando. Apertavam.
For a long time, I couldn't drive because feelings of fear closed in on me every time I got behind the wheel.
Close in on me. Charged with. Acusada de assassinato.
She's been charged with murder. She's been charged with murdering her husband.
Acusada de resistir.
He tried to run away from the police and was charged with resisting arrest.
Acusado.
He was charged with driving 75 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone.
Acusadas de.
Several people were arrested and charged with disturbing the peace after the match.
Acusados.
6 football players were charged with taking drugs to improve their performance. They
Acusados
finally
de.
caught Capone by charging him with tax evasion.
Acusados de evasão fiscal. Acusou de.
The paper charged her with using the company's money for her own purposes.
Acusou.
The newspaper charged him with misleading the public about the seriousness of the situation.
Encarregado de.
He was charged with taking care of the premises.
Encarregou-se de.
The president charged him with organizing the meeting. We
Encarregamos
charged
de.
her with locating new office space.
Encarregado de.
He was charged with getting this message to the commissioners.
Encarreguei.
Don't worry, I charged my top aide with that assignment, so we should have an update soon.
Bump into. Encontrei.
I bumped into your mother at the supermarket. We bumped into Kayla in a shop.
Encontrei.
You won't believe who I bumped into at the airport.
Cruzei com.
I happened to bump into Millie in the hallway. We bumped into Amy when we were in town last week. We didn't mean to exclude you. When Chad and I went out, we just bumped into the rest of the group, that's all.
Esbarrando.
She kept bumping into things. She
Esbarrou.
bumped into his tray, knocking the food onto his lap. I
Esbarrei.
lost my balance and bumped into the person ahead of me in line. Excuse me, I didn't mean to bump into you. The child on the bicycle nearly bumped into that old lady. It's easy to bump into furniture in the dark.
Trombar com.
As I turned round, I bumped into a filing cabinet.
Drinking in. Apreciar isso tudo.
The view is so beautiful. Let's just take a minute to drink it all in.
Absorviam as plantas.
They drank in the words of their leader.
Absorviam as palavras. Aprecie.
Sit out on the terrace and drink in the stunning view.
Absorver.
Let's stop for a moment and drink in this fresh mountain air.
Absorver.
I'm glad I was able to drink in the excitement and joy of our wedding day before it was all over. Terry and Amy drove up to the top of the hill to drink the sights in.
Apreciar a vista. Apreciar.
The shoreline was so beautiful that I stopped for a while to drink it in.
Apreciando.
She stood, drinking in the glittering view.
Absorvendo.
She just sat there, drinking in the atmosphere. She strolled to the window to drink in the view.
Gather up. Junte os brinquedos.
Gather up your toys now. It's time for us to leave.
Eu juntei os pratos.
I gathered the plates up and brought them into the kitchen.
Junte.
Look at this mess. Please gather up your things. Janet quickly gathered up her books and left the classroom.
Reuniu.
She gathered up the newspapers that were scattered around the floor.
Reuniu as nossas coisas.
Let's gather our things up and go. The officers still hadn't arrived by the time they gathered up the children and fled.
Reunir.
You have 10 minutes to gather up your kits and get back up here. I would ask her to dance if I could gather up the courage.
Reunir a coragem.
I spent a week gathering up the courage to say no. Jane is gathering up the courage to ask her boss for a pay raise.
Par with. Se desfazer do seu gato.
Janice hated to part with her cat. But the landlord wouldn't allow pets.
Me desfazer de velhos.
It's hard for me to part with old knickknacks.
Knickknacks, badulaques.
I just couldn't part with my old car, even though it uses too much gas.
Se desfez.
He parted with much of his collection to pay his gardening bills.
Me desfazer.
I hate to part with this dress, but if you really want it, you can have it.
Se separar da sua amiga.
She did not want to part with her friend.
Se
He
separar.
hated to part with that old motorcycle.
Me separar dos meus
I
livros.
could never part with my books.
De gastarem seu dinheiro.
Buyers might require further assurances before parting with their cash.
Gastar R$50.
You really have to be a Dylan fan to part with $50 for Highway 61 Interactive, released earlier this year.
Pare with. Gastar.
My dad does everything in his power not to part with his money, so we don't expect to get anything we don't absolutely need.
nail down. Pregar, lembre-se de pregar a lona. Ou então ele será levado para o vento quando a tempestade chegar.
Remember to nail the tarp down, or it will get blown away when the storm hits.
Pregar,
I've been meaning to nail down this loose step before someone falls over it.
pregamos,
We examined the deck and nailed down all loose boards.
identificar a origem,
It would be useful if you could nail down the source of this tension.
identificá-la,
We looked for the source of the problem, but couldn't nail it down.
identificar,
We haven't been able to nail down the cause of the fire yet. Her doctors haven't yet been able to nail down a diagnosis. I think we've nailed down the cause of the electrical failures.
esclarecer, nail down,
I'd like to nail down the dates we want to fly, so I can start looking at ticket prices.
esclarecer,
2 days isn't enough time to nail down the details of an agreement. We need to
esclarecer,
nail down exactly how much money was embezzled by our accountant. The
esclarecer,
reporter nailed down the story by checking all the facts.
alcançar,
The U.S. wants to nail down an agreement on anti-subsidy rules.
alcançar o evasivo acordo,
The two leaders met to try to nail down the elusive accord.
chegamos,
After a 5-hour meeting, we finally nailed down a deal.
fechar o acordo,
They're on the verge of getting the agreement nailed down.
fechar um acordo,
The government hopes to nail down a deal with China by year's end.
garantir o fornecimento,
U.S. companies are rushing to nail down long-term supplies of critical parts.
garantir lucro,
He sold the shares just because he thought it prudent to nail down a profit.
garantir,
He's traveling all over the state to nail down support for his Senate campaign.
garantir a vitória,
They need to score another touchdown to nail down the victory.
esclareça,
Before they repair the car, nail them down to a price.
esclarecer,
I'd like to nail them down on the dates, so I can start looking at ticket prices for flights. I'll
esclarecer,
try to nail Jim down about the date.
conseguiu,
She nailed down her 6th win of the season.
alcançamos,
We nailed the top spot down by defeating the 2 best teams in the league.
conseguiu,
After a long game, he finally nailed down the point.
pare back and pare down. Reduzimos o orçamento,
After much arguing, we pared back the budget.
reduzir,
They have had to pare back the services they offer as their funding was reduced.
foi reduzida,
The 3-hour play has been pared back to 2 hours. The training budget has been pared back to a minimum.
pare it
The
back,
article was too long, and it took me a long time to pare it back.
pare it back, reduzido,
The number of ministries has been pared back by a third.
pare back,
We've had to continually pare back the expenses ever since one of our investors pulled out.
pare down, reduziram,
They have pared down the number of employees as they haven't been doing well. I will have to pare the budget down to the minimum.
reduzir,
See if you can pare your report down a little bit. 15 pages is far too long. We should pare down the supplies we need in our storage room until we have only what we absolutely need. The luxury tax won't do much to pare down the budget deficit. The city manager is trying to pare down the number of tax-exempt organizations that donate to the city.
foi reduzido,
The novel was pared down to 200 pages.
aparar as suas unhas,
You need to pare down your nails. They're like... You need to pare down your nails. They're like little daggers.
Aparar as tábuas de ambos os lados.
If you pare the boards down on either side, they should fit into the space.
Aparar os azulejos.
I pared down the tiles so that they would fit snugly together.
Aparei com canivete.
The pegs were too big for the hole, so I pared them down with a pocket knife.
Shake down. Extorqui $5 dele.
They tried to shake him down for $5.
Shake me down. Me extorqui.
If you're trying to shake me down, forget it. I have no cash.
Extorquido.
Residents complain about being harassed and even shaken down for their money. The assistant has been shaking the governor down ever since he found out that she'd been taking bribes.
Bribes, propinas. Extorquindo.
Before you know it, the kids will be driving their own cars and shaking you down for money on the weekends. Let's wait and see how everything shakes down.
Se estabelece. Shakes down. Se estabelecer.
Give the new arrangements time to shake down. I'm sure they'll be okay. The new IT network is still causing delays, but is expected to shake down by year-end.
Ser estabelecida. Se estabelecendo.
So, how's your first week in the office been? You shaking down all right? It took us a few weeks to shake down after the move, but we're feeling right at home now.
Me revistaram.
The airport security guards shook me down.
Revistando todo mundo.
The bouncer is shaking down everyone to make sure no one smuggles booze or drugs into the concert. The officer shook me down, even though I told him I didn't have a gun on me. The officer shook me down, even though I told him I didn't have a gun on me.
Revistaram.
They shook down all the passengers looking for drugs.
Carry around. Carrego meu filho comigo.
I always carry around my child with me.
Carregar uma criança.
After carrying a toddler around all day, my arms are pretty sore.
Carregar esse bebê.
I'm tired of carrying this baby around with me everywhere. Can't I buy a baby carriage?
Carregar toda essa culpa.
You don't have to carry around all that guilt anymore.
Carregam.
People carry around all kinds of grief.
Kinds of grief, tipos de luto.
I hadn't spoken to my father in years, and now that he's dead, I've been carrying a lot of guilt around.
Max sempre anda com
Max carries around his checkbook with him.
seu talão de cheques. Ele sempre anda com uma mochila.
He carries a backpack around with him. I carry my phone around in my pocket. Police officers usually carry their guns around. I always carry a pen and paper around with me, in case I get an idea for a song when I'm away. I always carry a pen and paper around with me, in case I get an idea for a song when I'm away from home.
Ele irá levar consigo
He will carry around the memory of the accident with him for a long time.
Ele leva seu irmão.
She carries around her brother with her in her memories. Because I had such a loving relationship with my grandmother, I feel like I'll always carry her around with me. She's been carrying her idea for a new business around for years, but she's never taken the steps to make it a reality.
Float around. Flutuando por aí.
All sorts of paper and trash were floating around on the surface of the pond.
Flutuando à deriva.
Water hyacinths floated around, making a very tropical scene.
Jacintos aquáticos flutuavam à deriva, criando uma cena extremamente tropical.
Water hyacinths floated around, making a very tropical scene.
Boiando por aí no lago.
Look at all the ducks just floating around the pond.
Vagaram a esmo.
The travelers floated around the countryside, stopping here and there to eat and rest.
Por aí, em algum lugar.
I can't find my purse, but it must be floating around here somewhere.
Por aí, em algum lugar.
There's a pen floating around here somewhere. I just saw that book yesterday, so it must be floating around here somewhere. There's a lot of cash floating around in the economy at the moment.
Questões no ar que precisamos discutir.
We have various issues floating around that we need to discuss. Well, you know, there are rumors floating around.
Há boatos andando por aí. Por aí.
There are still some unfounded fears floating around out there about cancer being contagious.
Há boato por aí.
There's a rumor floating around that you're thinking of leaving.
Sleep off. Dormir para se recuperar.
John drank too much and went home to sleep it off. She went home to sleep off her headache.
Se recuperar.
He had too much to drink, and I'm letting him sleep it off. The day after the wedding, I'll still be sleeping off the champagne. It's a good idea to spend the first night of your holiday sleeping off the jet lag. They had been up all night and were sleeping it off. She was sleeping off the anesthesia. He drank a bit too much, but he'll be fine. He just needs to sleep it off. I think I'll head home early and try to sleep off this head cold. Bill is at home sleeping off the effects of the drug they gave him.
Dormindo para se recuperar.
He has a hangover. Let him sleep it off.
Sleep it off. Bag off. Se excusando no último minuto.
He's always begging off at the last minute.
Se desculpando.
She begged off early from the party because she was so tired.
Pedir para ser dispensado.
I had to beg off from the meeting because I had too much work to do.
Declina.
Asked to name her favorites from her films, Hepburn begs off.
Me excusar.
I've spent the last 3 nights working until 1 a.m. and I'm rather tired of it. So I'm going to beg off tonight.
Declinar.
She had to beg off that project when she realized that it interfered with her normal duties.
Eu declinei ir ao jantar.
I begged the dinner party off last night because I was feeling ill.
Ela declinou.
She begged the trip to the zoo off.
Me excusar.
I have an important meeting, so I'll have to beg off.
Declinar.
He's asked me out to dinner 3 times already, but I have to beg off again. We were invited to stay for dinner, but we had to beg off.
Bag off. Clear out. Tiramos todas as nossas roupas velhas.
We cleared out all our old clothes.
Tiramos tudo.
We cleared the living room out and turned it into a dance floor.
Arrumando as coisas.
I found the letters when I was clearing out after my father died.
Vou dar uma geral.
I'm going to clear out the cupboards tomorrow.
Dar jeito.
Isn't it about time you cleared out some of your junk?
Esvaziar.
I took the precaution of clearing out my desk before I left.
Esvaziou.
It began to get dark and the shop cleared out.
Esvaziado.
Let's wait to leave until the parking lot has cleared out more.
Esvaziou.
The fire alarm cleared the building out in no time.
Foi embora.
He cleared out with all the money and left her with the kids. I sometimes feel like clearing out of here altogether. I hear Daphne's finally told her husband to clear out. Her landlord gave her a week to clear out of her apartment.
Deixar o apartamento.
Everyone cleared out as soon as the fire alarm began sounding.
Just clear out. Só vai embora.
Just clear out.
Só vai embora.
The rest of you clear out of here.
O resto de vocês sumam daqui.
Clear out, he bawled. Private property.
Por favor, vão embora.
Please clear out.
Factor in. Incluir os custos.
Remember to factor in staffing costs when you are planning the project.
Incluir.
Total spending was virtually the same in real terms after factoring in inflation. You'd better consider this and factor this into your decision making. You must factor insurance payments into the cost of maintaining a car. In preparing the schedule, we factored in vacation and sick days.
Levados em consideração.
Her salary is not that high when childcare costs and medical insurance are factored in.
Considerar a umidade.
It's going to feel like 110 degrees there when you factor in the humidity. People are earning more, but when inflation is factored in, they are no better off. The age of the patients and their overall health must be factored into the results.
Levadas em consideração. Considerar.
Before you accept this job offer, you need to factor in how long the commute is.
Commute. Viagem. Longa viagem.
The boss factored in overtime when giving out bonuses. These observations are interesting, but they don't really factor in.
Identify with. Se identificar com.
Readers can identify with the hero of the novel. He identified with our distress.
Identificar com.
He didn't seem to be able to identify with ordinary people and their aspirations. Which of the characters do you most identify with?
Se identificam.
He believes she has been successful because people identify with her and trust her.
Nos identificar com.
We can all identify with these people in their desire for freedom and independence.
Identificar com.
She would only play a role if she could identify with the character. I could speak their language and identify with their problems because I had been there myself.
Associamos verde à grama.
We usually identify green with grass.
Associar carrões grandes.
We tend to identify big cars with greedy people. The Americans were anxious not to become identified with colonial authorities.
Associada ao movimento dos direitos civis.
She has always been identified with the civil rights movement.
Associadas à extrema esquerda.
These groups have always been identified with the radical left. I always identify the smell of pine needles with Christmas time.
Associados à reforma.
The candidates all want to identify themselves with reform. It is a mistake to identify being healthy with being thin.
Do away with. Nos livramos da monarquia.
He thinks it's time we did away with the monarchy.
Did away. Abolidas.
A lot of the restrictions on imports have been done away with.
Eliminados.
These ridiculous rules and regulations should have been done away with years ago.
Eliminados.
Computerization has enabled us to do away with a lot of paperwork.
Eliminar muita papelada.
The long-range goal must be to do away with nuclear weapons altogether.
Abolir.
The company had to do away with free lunches in order to save money.
Livrar-se do
They
sistema.
have decided to do away with the old lighting system.
Se livrado da sua esposa.
There were rumors that Doug had done away with his wife.
Eliminado a irmã dela.
She thinks he may have done away with her sister. Thousands of persons have been done away with in this manner.
Suffered from. Sofrer de.
The poor child suffers from terrible eczema on her arms and legs.
A pobre criança sofre de eczema terrível em seus braços e pernas.
The poor child suffers from terrible eczema on her arms and legs. My father suffered from depression all his life. I treat patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease. She suffered from depression for most of her adult life. She's been suffering from cancer for 2 years. Pregnant women often suffer from iron deficiency. Do you suffer from migraine?
Você padece de enxaqueca?
Do you suffer from migraine? He has helped patients suffering from anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. Johnny suffers from asthma. Do you suffer from any allergies? There was no indication that the appellant was suffering from psychiatric disorder. The country is suffering from a drought. The region continues to suffer from flooding.
Enchentes.
London employers were suffering from a desperate shortage of school leavers.
Passando por uma grave depressão.
The country has been suffering from a severe economic depression since leaving the customs union 3 years ago.
Build on. Esse estudo baseia-se em trabalhos anteriores. Baseia-se em.
This study builds on earlier work. A good relationship is built on trust.
Baseia-se na confiança, nos basear em nossa reputação.
We must build on our reputation to expand the business.
Baseia-se.
The study builds on research by the nation's leading geneticists. The new plan will build on the success of the previous program. She built her entire argument on the data presented in a scientific article that was later proven to have been falsified. He has to build on his strong friendships with the customers.
Ampliar as ideias.
We need to build on the ideas we have had so far.
Ampliar nossos sucessos.
We will continue to build on our previous success.
Ampliá-lo.
Our progress has been good so far. Let's build on it. Okay, class, let's build on Janet's idea. What else does this passage tell us about the protagonist's motivation?
Rope off. Cercado de cada lado com uma corda.
The path was roped off on either side.
Isolou.
The police roped off the street for the summer festival.
Interditada com cordão.
Part of the exhibit had been roped off.
Cercada com uma corda.
We came across a large roped-off area.
Interditou.
The police roped off the scene of the crime.
Bloqueadas por uma corda.
The stairs were roped off. Police roped off the street to investigate the accident. They roped off the porch.
Interditado.
The place had been roped off by the police, but he went in anyway. They roped off part of the street.
Talk out.
You need to sit down with her and talk this out.
Resolver isso. Toque this out.
If you two don't talk out the differences between you, it'll be hard for you to continue working together.
Discutir as coisas.
Talking things out with someone else can be helpful.
Discuta essas
Talk out
coisas.
your problems. Do not keep them bottled up. John's coming over to talk out the problems he's been having with his girlfriend. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about the problem in a calm and neutral environment. It might help if you talked it out with Dad. We need to talk out the issue with the others before making a decision. He talked her out of quitting school.
Me dissuadiu de pegar cachorro.
My mother tried to talk me out of getting a dog. People tried to talk him out of it, but he insisted.
Dissuadi-lo disso.
I was going to move, but my parents talked me out of it. After discussing the issue for over an hour, I had pretty much talked myself out.
Ficado exausto.
My sister was really distraught about her breakup, so I just listened while she talked herself out.
Falado até cansar. Ficou exausta de falar.
She was talked out in the first hour of discussion.
He sought to recorrer à violência.
They had to resort to violence.
Recorrer a pedir dinheiro.
He had to resort to asking his parents for money.
Recorrer a
I had to resort to threats to get my money. The company could decide to resort to litigation. There's hope the countries will reach a settlement without resorting to armed conflict.
recorrer ao conflito armado.
Officials fear that extremists may resort to violence. He says he is praying for rain, but isn't yet resorting to a rain dance. Even these organisms resort to fermentation as an auxiliary process when the oxygen supply is insufficient.
Recorrem.
The company may resort to a temporary closure of its only plant. We regret we must resort to legal action.
Recorrer a uma ação judicial. Recorrer à força.
We hope they will be able to resolve the situation without resort to force. Vets have had to resort to killing the animals. We may have to resort to using untrained staff.
Recorrer a roubar.
Many homeless teenagers resort to stealing when their money runs out.
Recorri a gritar.
When she didn't answer the phone, I resorted to shouting her name on the street.
Snap up. Agarrada. Havia sido agarrada.
By 10 o'clock, most of the best bargains had been snapped up.
Conseguir pechinchas.
Shoppers came to the store to snap up bargains after the holidays.
Eles vão arrebatá-lo.
The company is hiring. When they see your work history, they'll snap you up.
Esgotaram dentro.
Tickets for the concert were snapped up within 3 hours of going on sale.
Barganhas esperando ser tomadas.
The fall in property prices means that there are a lot of bargains waiting to be snapped up.
Eu agarrei.
When I was offered the chance to work in Denmark, I snapped it up. If shares go lower, you'll snap them up at cheaper levels and be well placed to profit from any future recovery.
Foi imediatamente.
She was snapped up by a large law firm.
O contratou
The
imediatamente,
company snapped him up and he became a project manager.
puxando todos eles.
In Louisiana, sugar farms are having trouble finding workers because oil companies are snapping them up.
Pop out. Urso saiu do arbusto. Saiu.
Suddenly, a bear popped out from the bushes. The kids popped out from behind the couch to surprise their mother for her birthday.
Saiu.
You stick a bill in the vending machine, and the change pops out. I opened the drawer, and a mouse popped out.
Saiu de lá.
I went to open the mailbox, and I nearly got a heart attack when a raccoon popped out. Dan just popped out to get some ground beef from the butcher's. He popped out for a quick coffee break. Would you watch the baby for a second? I'm going to pop out for a little bit of fresh air. He'll be back in a minute. He just popped out to get some coffee.
Só saiu para tomar café. Apenas tire as pilhas.
Just pop out the batteries and replace them with fresh ones.
Tirei uma das lentes.
I accidentally popped one of the lenses out of my glasses while I was cleaning it.
Tiraram a vidraça.
The kids accidentally popped out the bottom pane of the window. The memory chip in my computer was broken, so I popped it out and installed a new one.
Pile on.
We all piled on as soon as they opened the doors of the bus.
Nos amontoamos. Piled on.
The whole team piled onto the running back after he scored the winning touchdown.
Se amontoaram.
The kids piled on the bed to watch the scary movie together.
Se acumularam.
Responsibilities piled on while I was abroad.
Acumulando.
I used credit card cash advances, piling on more debt. I had little time for all the tasks that were piling on. The team piled on the points in the first half of the game. I always pile on the pounds over Christmas. I've been piling on the pounds. When I returned to live with my parents, the weight piled on because I was stuffing myself with home cooking.
Ganhei peso.
I'd given up smoking, but I piled on weight as a result, which was a bad thing.
Aumentando a pressão.
The UN is piling on the pressure, and the two sides may both have to withdraw.
Aumentando durante o dia.
Threats to withhold aid have not helped, but simply piled on the pressure in an entirely unjust way. The pressure piled on throughout the day.
Aumentou a pressão.
The German team piled on the pressure in the last 15 minutes. They piled on the pressure as the game came to a close and scored in the final minute.
Começaram a apedrejar.
After the first few negative reviews, all the other critics started piling on.
Atacando desde que escrevi meu controverso artigo.
People from across the state have been piling on to me ever since I wrote my controversial opinion piece for the local paper.
Atacar ainda mais.
She's been through enough already. I don't think we need to pile on any further.
Exagerando pouco.
I know I'm piling it on a bit, but there is a serious point to be made.
Não exagere o drama.
Don't pile on the drama. Things aren't really that bad. She does tend to pile it on.
Shake off. Se livrar de hábitos aprendidos.
Businessmen are trying to shake off habits learned under 6 decades of a protected economy.
Sacudir a letargia do inverno.
Get your body moving to boost energy, stay supple, and shake off winter lethargy.
Sacudir o mal-estar.
He was generally feeling bad. He just couldn't shake it off.
Se livrar da sensação.
He had a hard time shaking off the feeling that someone was spying on him.
Não consigo me livrar.
I've had this cold for nearly a week that I just can't seem to shake off.
Consegui superar.
I could feel myself getting sick, but I managed to shake it off.
Superar essa gripe muito em breve.
I hope I can shake off this flu pretty soon.
Se livrar do carrapato.
He tried to shake the tick off, but it had dug itself into his skin.
Não sacuda a lama dentro da casa.
Don't shake the mud off inside. Go out in the backyard and do it.
Me livrar da aranha.
I tried to shake the spider off.
Sacudiu a água.
The dog climbed out of the creek and shook off the water.
Me desvencilhei dele.
He grabbed my arm. I shook him off.
Ela se desvencilhou da mão.
She shook off his restraining hand.
Se desembaraçou dele.
She shook him off and went in.
Cachoalhe o cobertor antes de entender-lhe.
Shake the blanket off before you lay it out. We shook off the picnic blanket to get rid of the grasshoppers.
Sacudi.
I picked up the beach towel and shook it off.
Despistar dos seus perseguidores.
He was unaware that they had shaken off their pursuers.
Me livrar dele.
My little brother has been following me around all day. I need to shake him off. I caught him a lap later, and although I could pass him, I could not shake him off.
Approve of.
My mother doesn't approve of my friends.
Minha mãe não aprova dos meus amigos.
He doesn't approve of smoking. I don't approve of your behavior right now. My parents have never approved of any of my girlfriends. I thoroughly approve of what the government is doing. They think I'm an old fuddy-duddy because I don't approve of tattoos. We are a moral, ethical people, and therefore we do not approve of their activities. I don't approve of that kind of language, she said, pursing her lips. You may not approve of what he did, but he's still your brother. I approve of the way you have remodeled the kitchen. I don't approve of your foul language. My voice teacher does not approve of eating ice cream before singing. My parents need to know exactly where I plan to go before they can approve of my trip.
Grow to do something. Começando a gostar do lugar e das pessoas.
They had grown to like the place and the people.
Começando a perceber.
He had grown to realize that she would never change.
Comecei a gostar dele.
Ian annoyed me at first, but I really grew to like him as we spent more time together.
Começar a querer.
Every young adult grows to want more freedom from their family. That's just how it is.
Começou a odiar.
Grandma grew to hate the cold and eventually moved to Florida.
Fui conhecendo o Bob.
As I grew to know Bob, I began to like him. She slowly grew to like the new house.
Começando a gostar.
I'm growing to like his music.
Fui gostando.
I grew to like living in a small town.
Começando a gostar.
I've grown to like her over the months.
Reek off. O hálito dela fede a alho.
Her breath reeks of garlic. The incident reeks of corruption.
Cheira a corrupção. Fedem a alho depois de eu precisar picar.
My hands always reek of garlic after I have to chop it up.
Fede a cachorro.
The house reeks of wet dog. Open the window.
Fedendo a loção pós-barba.
He came down for his prom, reeking of aftershave.
Fede a um perfume muito forte.
She reeks of a very strong perfume. She must have spilled it on herself.
Fede a cebolas.
This whole house reeks of onions. What did you cook?
Fede a ovos podres.
The kitchen reeks of rotten eggs.
Fede a torto.
This place reeks of a horrible odor.
Cheira a favoritismo.
His promotion reeks of favoritism.
Cheira a preconceito.
The verdict of the trial reeks of prejudice.
Cheira a
The
desonestidade.
deal reeked of dishonesty.
Cheira a fanatismo.
We must do something about it. The report reeks of bigotry.
Cheira a corrupção.
The deal struck by the government and the corporate lobbying groups reeks of corruption.
Drift along, indo sem rumo na faculdade.
I'm worried because you're just drifting along through high school with no interest in planning your future.
Se deixando levar,
The project drifted along until we received the leadership we needed. Gary drifts along without any purpose. He'll never amount to anything.
se deixando levar.
We cannot simply drift along.
Se deixar levar.
Anyone can drift along with the tide, but it takes courage and strength to fight back.
Vagando ao longo da ampla calçada de boulevard popular.
He was drifting along the wide pavement of a popular boulevard when he decided that it was time for a drink. She was angry to be drifting along so aimlessly.
Endlessly, sem rumo, flutuando à deriva.
We just drifted along on an inflatable raft until we reached the other end of the river.
Flutuando.
That feather drifted along as if by magic. The boat just drifted along lazily with the current.
Object to. Eu me oponho à sua opinião.
I object to your opinion. The city council objects to vulgar art displays in public buildings.
Se opõe. Object to. Se opõe ao.
I know the board members object to the spending increase, but I really think it is vital for the company's success.
Opuseram a proposta.
A couple of people objected to the proposal, but the vast majority approved of it.
Opondo aos planos.
Local tradesmen are objecting to plans for a big, new, out-of-town shopping center.
Objeta a ser chamada.
She objects to being called his assistant. He objects to the label magician. He objected to the fact that the documents weren't available before the meeting.
Objetam a mulher.
My parents have always objected to the women I date, so I just don't tell them about my love life anymore. Religious traditionalists objected to theories of evolution being taught in schools.
Soak in. Ficar de molho no caldo.
Let the beans soak in the stock to become soft and flavorful.
De molho é uma poça.
The letters had been soaking in a puddle, so the writing was completely illegible.
Ficar de molho.
Let the meat soak in the marinade for 2 days.
Marinada. Ser absorvida.
It takes a few hours for the mixture to soak in.
For absorvida pelo piso.
If moisture soaks into the floorboards, it could cause them to warp or rot. Wait until the dye soaks in before you handle the fabric.
Seja absorvida.
Pour water around the base of the plant and allow it to soak in. Put some cleaning foam on the carpet and wait for it to soak in. The rain soaked into the parched ground as fast as it fell. I'm glad it soaked in. I was afraid it would run off.
Eu estava feliz que tenha sido absorvido, estava com medo que fosse escorrer para fora. Foi compreendida até que vimos atores.
The gravity of what happened in this field 200 years ago didn't soak in until we saw actors recreate. The gravity of what happened in this field 200 years ago didn't soak in until we saw actors recreating the war as it would have been fought.
Foi capturada.
I was so stunned that none of what the police officer told me soaked in.
Fossem assimiladas.
He sat quietly, letting her words soak in.
Ser absorvida.
Close your eyes and let the music soak in.
Focus on. Focalizei no Fred.
I focused on Fred and snapped just as he moved.
Eu tirei foto assim que ele se moveu.
He focused the camera on Jane and snapped the shutter.
Ele focalizou a câmera na Jenny e apertou o obturador.
I focused the binoculars on the bird on a branch of the tree. I can't seem to focus the camera on the tree. It's still all blurry.
Embaçada.
I focused the camera on the car across the street. Tonight's program focuses on homelessness. Have you decided which topics the meeting will focus on? Could we please focus the discussion on the matter at hand for a few moments? Let's focus our attention on Tom and discuss his achievements so far. The company director wanted to focus the staff's attention on finding a solution to the problem. Many of the papers focused their attention on the controversy surrounding the foreign secretary.
Tente se concentrar nos fatos mais importantes.
Try to focus on the most important facts.
Se concentrar.
By the age of 30, he had decided to focus almost exclusively on corporate work. Let's focus on the question of the electric bill, if you don't mind. We shall continue to focus our efforts on cutting costs. The company's CEO is moving to a new corporate headquarters in Dubai to focus on business in the Middle East.
Do out.
They've had their kitchen done out in light blue tiles.
Decoraram a cozinha. Decorada, done out.
The room was newly done out in country house style.
Enfeitaram, done out.
They did the room out with balloons and streamers ready for the party. We've had the bathroom done out in pale yellow. The room was beautifully done out in pastel colors.
Decorado em cores pastéis. Vou dar um jeito nesses armários.
While I'm down here, I'll do out these cupboards.
Eu pus em ordem ontem.
The room's tidy. I did it out yesterday.
Vou arrumar rapidamente o
I'm
quarto.
going to briefly do the room out, get changed, and then I'll be ready to go.
Meu chefe tentou me roubar de uma folga de um dia.
My boss tried to do me out of a day's holiday.
Foram roubados milhões.
Pensioners have been done out of millions of pounds as a result of the changes.
Eu fui privado.
I've been done out of what was rightfully mine.
Eles o privaram de sua herança.
They did him out of his inheritance.
Tell a parte. Não sabia diferenciar a nota de.
I couldn't tell apart the real $20 bill from the counterfeit one.
Counterfeit, a falsa.
The twins were identical, and we couldn't tell them apart.
Não podia diferenciar os gêmeos, né?
The almost universal use of flavorings makes it hard to tell the products apart.
Diferenciar os produtos, diferenciar os resultados.
It would be impossible to tell the results apart, but the methods used to achieve them are very different. Even our parents sometimes have trouble telling me and my brother apart.
Distingui-las.
The two women are so similar that only their husbands can tell them apart.
Distingui-las.
As babies, the twins looked so much alike that I just couldn't tell them apart. He looked at me and said he often wondered how I told my books apart. Salesmen, traders, and managers swarmed over the floor, and at first I could not tell them apart. The governments and towns have got to find some way of telling them apart. This one is real, and this one is counterfeit. You can tell them apart by the small holographic mark at the top corner of the genuine document.
Shut up. Shut up. Bateu papo com.
The salesperson chatted us up for an hour before we finally decided to buy something. I love chatting up tourists visiting our city. It gives you such diverse and interesting perspectives.
Puxei papo.
I chatted up the director, hoping to get a part in the film. He was soon chatting up all the board members. He tried to chat up a girl at the dance. He'd spent most of that evening chatting up one of my friends. She was chatting one of the guys up.
Flertando. Ela estava flertando com um dos caras.
She was chatting one of the guys up. He tried to chat up a very attractive woman from Wales, but failed miserably. He spent all evening chatting her up and buying her drinks. I was chatting up this cute guy at the bar last night and managed to get his phone number. I hate when people chat me up in bars. I just want to have a nice time out with my friends. Leave it to Charlie to chat up the girls. Many people go to the bar just to chat up the attractive bartenders. By their false smiles, we could tell they were coming over to chat us up.
Flertar conosco. Chat us up. Drum up. Gerar apoio.
The UN Secretary General arrived in Tokyo to drum up support for international peacekeeping.
Gerar algum negócio.
I'm making calls to drum up some business. I try to drum up enthusiasm for trigonometry, but my students are just not interested.
Aumentar vendas.
Retailers are trying to drum up sales with price cuts.
Gerar algum negócio.
Advertisements should help to drum up some business. They are trying to drum up some business.
Gerar algum.
He was trying to drum up some enthusiasm for the project.
Criando negócio.
It is to be hoped that he is merely drumming up business.
Gerar energia.
I wondered whether it was time to drum up the energy to drive there.
Reunir mais apoio.
What else can we do to drum up more support for our campaign?
Inventar novo método.
They managed to drum up a new method. Anyone who drums up a better way of doing this tedious task will make a fortune.
Inventar uma história.
We need to drum up a story before Mom gets home and sees the vase we broke.
Ele esperava criar álibi.
He hoped to drum up an alibi.
Sweep back.
She swept her hair back into a bun.
Ela puxou seu cabelo para trás em coque.
She swept her hair back into a bun.
Puxar para trás.
I need to get my hair cut. I hate having to sweep my hair back all the time.
Puxou para trás.
He swept back the curtains to let in the brilliant morning light. He swept back the curtains to let in the brilliant morning light.
Puxou para trás.
She swept back her hair as if to say she wasn't afraid to get her hand dirty. He took the brush and swept his hair back in a huge wave. She swept back her hair in a striking arrangement. Tina's hair was swept back in a gorgeous bun.
Puxados para trás.
It's hard to say if her swept back curls could look any prettier. It's a revolutionary type of airplane with swept back wings. The A380 can operate on existing runways because with its swept back wings, it takes up only slightly more space than a 747. The Mi-28A has small swept back wings with 4 suspension units.
Enflechadas, com 4 unidades de suspensões. Suas asas enflechadas. Brush aside. Nos afastou de lado.
The man brushed us aside so that he could board the bus. I brushed aside the curtain and entered the room. The police brushed the people aside to make way for the president. I brushed aside the branch, not realizing it was poison ivy.
Coloquei de lado.
I brushed aside the clutter and put my books on the desk.
Desconsiderar.
I know they're young, but you can't just brush their questions aside. They deserve answers.
Não estão levando a sério.
I haven't heard back from that company, so I guess they're brushing aside my complaint.
Ignorou.
He brushed aside questions about his son's arrest.
Desconsiderou.
Duke brushed aside suggestions that his campaign was finished.
Ignorou.
The minister brushed aside accusations that he had lied. Perhaps you shouldn't brush the idea aside too hastily.
Não levou a sério.
He brushed away my views on politics.
Ignorar.
You must not brush this matter aside. The teacher brushed aside our questions.
Fly across. Atravessar voando o Atlântico.
Who was the first person to fly across the Atlantic? He must love you a lot to fly across the Atlantic. Amelia Earhart was the only woman to fly across the Atlantic. Well, you can't fly across the country and expect me to talk about something that I'm not ready to talk about.
Pássaro atravessou o espaço aberto na floresta.
A bird flew across the open area in the forest.
Atravessou.
A large jet flew across the clear blue sky. You can fly across the ocean in a matter of hours and be home the next day if necessary.
Cruzar.
All I want is to fly across the world in a helicopter and photograph downwards. I live in California, but the rest of my family is in New York, so I've flown across the country many times.
Cruzar.
My dream has always been to fly across the Atlantic, but the way you want me to do it is... My dream has always been to fly across the Atlantic, but the way you want me to do it is far from the way I've envisioned it.
Atravessou voando o quarto.
Ellen flew across the room and greeted her uncle with a kiss.
Running. Levou para a delegacia.
The cop ran George in so they could question him extensively. They ran her in to protect her from the rioters.
Levaram para a delegacia, prendê-lo.
The police were going to run him in, but he got away.
Levaram para a
The
delegacia.
cops ran him in to protect him from a hit by the mafia.
Problemas de peso estão na minha família.
Weight problems run in my family.
Estão no sangue.
Artistic ability runs in the family. In 1974, Sarah won the same competition.
A alergia de família.
The allergy runs in her family.
Levar meu carro.
I have to run my car in for an oil change.
Levar o
I
caminhão.
will run in the truck for the mechanic to take a look at it.
Vou dar uma passada.
If I have time, I'll run in to see Aunt Mary.
Ser incluídas.
Quotes like this should only run in if they are 2 or 3 sentences long.
Ele se estende por 3 páginas inteiras.
This paragraph is way too long. It runs in for 3 full pages. I felt totally lost by the time I got to the end of it. The quote runs in for too long and distracts the reader's attention.
Stress out. Estressada.
She's been feeling very stressed out since she started her new job.
Estressado.
I was really stressed out before the finals. I've got too much to do and I'm completely stressed out. I've been really stressed out. Now, don't stress out, but the boss has some things he wants you to change in the project. I can't believe he's stressing out about something so trivial. Don't stress yourself out trying to finish the project. I'll take care of it. Studying for exams always stresses me out. Stop talking about the exam all the time. You're stressing me out. The tight deadlines are stressing out everybody in the office.
Gaming for. Ele foi alvo de muitas críticas.
He has come in for a lot of criticism.
Foi alvo.
The director has come in for a lot of criticism over his handling of the affair. The mayor came in for a lot of criticism of his remarks. Fast food has come in for further criticism in a report published today.
Recebeu críticas.
The government has come in for fierce criticism over its handling of this affair.
Se tornaram alvo.
The plans have already come in for fierce criticism in many quarters of the country. The government's economic policies have come in for a lot of criticism.
Vão ter de se sujeitar.
Those boys are going to have to come in for a punishment after starting the fight.
Tornou-se alvo.
His last book came in for some heavy criticism.
Recebeu críticas.
Your report came in for a lot of criticism at the last board meeting.
Flag down. Policial nos parou.
A police officer flagged us down.
Parar.
I was finally able to flag down a passing motorist to help with our stalled car. It'll take a while to flag a taxi down. Why don't we just walk to the museum?
Chame táxi.
Please go out and flag a taxi down. I'll be right out. She went to flag down a taxi. The police were flagging down all cars.
Parei táxi.
I flagged down a taxi when it started raining. When we ran out of gas, we flagged the police officer down to ask for help. By the time Ruth rushed out and flagged down the driver, smoke was rising from Clint's shoes. They flagged down a passing family who stopped to help them.
Level with.
I'll level with you. The salary is not particularly good.
Eu vou ser sincero com você. I will level with you.
He never leveled with his parents about the accident. Level with me. Why did you do it? I'm going to level with you, okay? I'm not who you think I am. Jesse, you need to level with us so we can help you. We're on your side, but you need to tell us the truth.
Level with, ser sincero.
The police encouraged the criminal to level with them about the crime.
Seja sincero.
Level with me and tell me what you thought of my cake. She decided to level with him and tell him how she felt. His companions advised him to level with the customs inspector.
Ser sincero.
I'll level with you. I'm no great detective. I've no training or anything. He has leveled with the American people about his role in the affair.
Creep in into. Infiltrar-se. Creep in.
The French worry about the number of English words continuing to creep in.
Infiltrou-se.
A new meaning of sexy crept into the language a few years ago. Politicians have warned of voter cynicism creeping in unless there's an immediate inquiry.
Infiltrará.
It seems that very few errors crept into the text. Doubts began to creep into my mind about the likely success of the project. If delays are allowed to creep in, then job losses will be just around the corner. A few mistakes always creep in during the editing process. I may have allowed my personal feelings to creep in when I gave that job to my brother. A note of irritation crept into her voice. As she became more tired, errors began to creep into her work. One or two typing errors crept into the report. The cat crept into the bedroom.
Entrou furtivamente no quarto.
Luckily, Mom didn't hear us last night when we crept in after curfew. The thief planned to creep into the house and take cash and jewelry.
Work on. Investir em.
He'll have to work on getting fit before the game.
Melhorar sua resistência.
His dancing technique is good, but he needs to work on his stamina. I need to work on my pronunciation if I'm to pass the exam. If you worked on it, you could have a really good singing voice.
Investisse nisso.
A trainer has been brought in to work on her fitness.
Melhorar.
I'm taking a course to help me work on my French before we take our trip next summer.
Trabalhar.
You need to work on your pronunciation a bit more. The service is still not satisfactory, but the company say they're working on it. His jokes are good, but he needs to work on his delivery.
Trabalhando em planos.
We are working on plans for a new swimming pool. Samantha is working on her PhD at the moment. He has spent the last 2 years working on a book about childcare. Every weekend, you see him working on his car. He's working on his car. Lucas spent the whole weekend working on his car, but the engine is still making a strange noise.
Nos esforçar.
We need to work on ensuring that the children feel safe and confident.
Buscando uma solução.
Don't worry about that. I'm working on it. It'll get better. I'm working on it.
Surtiu efeito em mim.
I'm not saying it isn't real, but hypnotism has never worked on me. I heard pepper spray works on bears, so I always carry some with me when I go camping in the mountains. No, the computer's too old for that software to work on it. I'm afraid Tap to Pay doesn't work on my phone.
Tentar influenciar.
We'll have to work on Joey to find out what's going on. You leave him to me. I'll work on him. I'll work on your father and see if I can get him to change his mind.
Tentar influenciar.
He hasn't said he'll do it yet, but I'm working on him.
Leave off. Deixado de fora.
A bolt may have been left off the plane's forward door during production.
O parafuso pode ter sido deixado de fora do avião durante a produção. Deixado o nome dela fora da lista.
I would have left her name off the list, but that would have been rude. At his suggestion, they left his name off the credits so it wouldn't hurt their sales. She has been deliberately left off the guest list. We found she had left off our names. You can leave me off here. My house is just down the street.
Você pode me deixar aqui.
I'll leave you off at my parents' house on the way to my house. My car wouldn't start after I left off the kids at school.
Deixe de resmungar.
Please leave off moaning about everything. Hey, leave off. I hate people touching my hair.
Deixe disso. Já basta.
Leave off. I've had enough.
Deixe de comer.
I've decided to leave off eating meat for a while.
Paramos de comer.
We all left off eating and stood about with bowed heads.
Deixaram o tratamento.
Some of the patients left off treatment. I left off reading and went downstairs for supper. I picked up my book and began reading from where I left off.
Havia deixado.
He resumed the other story at the point where the previous author had left off. This novel begins where the other one leaves off. I picked up where he had left off.
Save for. Juntar dinheiro para um novo carro.
We need to start saving for a new car. I've always made a point of saving for emergencies. They are saving for a deposit on a house. We're saving up for a new car. I'm saving up for a new bike, and I've got almost $100. I am saving this cake for tomorrow. I thought I'd save the champagne for a special occasion. Try to save some money for your holiday. I know you wanted to be here on Thanksgiving, so I saved some turkey and pumpkin pie for you. The coach seems to be saving his best players for the second half of the game.
Com exceção de alguns corredores.
The park was deserted, save for a few joggers. The parking lot was virtually empty, save for a few cars clustered to one side. The parking lot was virtually empty, save for a few cars clustered to one side. The room is bare, no pictures, no carpet, no furniture save for a second-hand armchair. Ostentatious jewelry, save for the family tiara, will also be out.
Com exceção de alguns.
However, she is fit and active, save for a few aches. Save for one breakout success no one saw coming, the director's films have all been commercial failures.
Com exceção da Janete.
My entire department is just a bunch of idiots. Well, save for Janet. She's all right.
Shake up. Chacoalhar.
Make sure you shake up the carton of juice before you pour it out. It's easier to pour the ketchup if you shake the bottle up first.
Sacudir.
I shook up the medicine bottle as it says on the label.
Agitar.
Please shake up these pillows.
Reformar.
They saw the potential of the internet to shake up the whole retail sector and change the way it works. They appointed a new CEO to shake up the organization.
Reformar.
The new head of HR has already started to shake things up.
Reorganizar.
A new managing director was brought in to shake up the company.
Reformar.
He's running for senator as an outsider who will shake things up. The first
Reorganizar.
thing the new chairman of the company did was to shake up the management. Several new players have been brought in to shake up the team.
Vamos dar uma variada e tentar.
I'm tired of getting Chinese food. Let's shake things up and try that new Polynesian restaurant. It's important to shake up your day-to-day routine, or you may end up in a rut.
Dar uma variada.
It's time to shake up my life a bit.
Isso realmente abalou ele.
It really shook Jerry up when his best friend moved away.
Abalaram.
A series of robberies has shaken up residents in this area.
O abalou.
He was in the car when the accident happened. That really shook him up.
Abalada.
He said that the accident had left her a bit shook up, but she was going to be just fine. The collision shook up both drivers. I was shaken up for most of the day after hearing the news.
Abalaram.
Technological changes have shaken up many industries.
Went down. Para que ele abaixasse o vidro.
The policeman motioned to him to wind down the window.
Abaixe.
Don't wind your window down when you're waiting at a red light. If a stranger stops you, just wind the window down a fraction. Can I wind my window?
Window down. Descontrair.
I sank into a hot bath in order to wind down.
Descontrair.
Palm Beach is a place to relax, wind down, and live elegantly. A bath helps you wind down, reduces the stress of the day, and helps you sleep much more soundly. A bath helps you wind down, reduces the stress of the day, and helps you sleep much more soundly.
Descontrair.
When he goes on holiday, it takes him the first couple of days just to wind down. The stressfulness of the job makes it hard to wind down on the weekends.
Gradualmente reduzida. Wound down.
If a buyer cannot be found, the company will be wound down and closed. Business began to wind down as people awaited the new regime.
Reduzido gradualmente.
They're winding down their overseas operation because it is losing money. The UN has decided to wind down the peacekeeping mission. The factory will wind down production before closing next year. The department is being wound down after the election.
Wind down. Diminuir.
The storm finally began to wind down. The storm finally began to wind down after 4 hours of heavy rain. The city has started to wind down before the Christmas break. Unfortunately, the party was just winding down as we got there. The party started to wind down around 2 a.m.
Acabar. Wind down. Leave aside. Deixar o vestido de lado.
I can leave the dress aside for you if you'd like to think about it for a day.
Deixe de lado.
I recommend you leave aside a portion of each paycheck as a rainy day fund for the future. Leave some of the sugar aside for use in the icing. Leave aside some cookies too. Leave the financial aspects aside for a moment and focus on what kind of work would make you the happiest. Can you two just leave aside your differences for now and get this done, please?
Deixando de lado.
Leaving aside the financial implications, do you really believe your proposal will solve our problem? Leaving aside the question of cost, How many people do we need on the job? Leaving aside for a moment the question of expense, what would your view be of the suggested changes?
Deixando de lado.
Leaving aside the cost of options, which tends to be high, both these cars offer excellent value. Leaving aside the question of privacy, constant surveillance can be remarkably convenient.
Deixando a despesa de lado.
Leaving the expense aside, do we actually need a second car? Let's leave the question of who will pay for it aside for a while. We will leave aside the current situation and talk about the future.
Plan for. Planejamos para.
We carefully planned for almost every possibility. The leak in the coolant system could have been catastrophic. Thankfully, we planned for just such an emergency. It just feels like they didn't plan for this wedding very carefully, you know?
Planejando.
We've been planning for a trip across Europe for months now. I need to take some time and plan for my retirement. Many people don't plan for retirement and then find out that they haven't saved enough money. We need to plan for the future now that we're getting married.
Incluí-los nos convidados da ceia.
Jeff said you can plan for him for Christmas dinner.
Incluí-los nos convidados.
Fred just called and said he can show up for dinner after all. Please plan for him.
Incluí-los nos convidados.
Tony wasn't planned for, and there is no place for him to sit.
Fazendo os preparativos.
I am planning for 12. I hope everyone can come. We only planned for 6 guests, but then someone brought a friend. You're more than welcome to join us for dinner, but I hadn't planned for more than 4, so there might not be very much food.
Hack off. Cortou fora seu longo cabelo.
Kim even hacked off her long hair.
Cortou fora. Hacked off.
Surgeons saved a man's arm after it was hacked off at the elbow. I'm going to go out and hack off part of the bush that's blocking the driveway.
Cortar fora.
I need to get up that tree and hack that big branch off before it falls on the house. Please hack off that big branch over there.
Dando nos nervos. Hack me off.
He keeps talking behind my back, and it's really hacking me off. She hacks me off every single time.
Me dá nos nervos.
I can't stand Nellie. She always hacks me off. She's getting a bit hacked off with all the traveling she has to do.
Irritada.
Willie was really hacked off about the accident. She got a bit hacked off when I volunteered to help.
Lean back. Recline-se no sofá.
Here, lean back on the sofa and put this ice pack on your head. Here, lean back on the sofa and put this ice pack on your head.
Reclinou-se.
She leaned back and whispered something in her friend's ear. Don't lean back on me. I'm not a chair. Lean back on the couch and tell me what you are thinking. He sighed and leaned back in his chair.
Recoste-se.
Lean back and make yourself comfortable. Just lean back, relax, and enjoy the trip. Lean back, relax, and enjoy the show. The barber leaned me back to wash my hair in the basin. I leaned the large bookshelf back so Tom could vacuum underneath it.
Flute em. Inundou.
The water flooded in and soaked the carpets. When the dam broke, the water began to flood in.
Flood in.
I turned on the tap at full blast, and water flooded into the bathtub.
Inundaram.
People flooded into the mall as soon as it opened. We opened the door, and the dogs and cats flooded in. As soon as the bell rang, kids began flooding into the school building. Complaints flooded in as soon as the comments were broadcast.
Enxurrada.
Help flooded in from all over the world after the disaster struck the city. When he saw the old photos, memories of his childhood began to flood in. Messages of support and encouragement flooded in after the accident.
Head back. Vamos voltar.
This is far enough. Let's head back. Wow, it's already time for us to head back. We could have a bite to eat before we head back. We had better head back to school before anyone realizes we cut class. He walked to the end of the block and then headed back to the office.
Voltar à vila.
We should head back to the village.
Voltar para casa.
It's late. Let's head back home.
Voltar para
I
casa.
walked to the end of the street and then headed back home. It has been a great day, but I think it is time we head back home.
Regressar à cidade.
I should head back to the city. Time to head back to the ship.
Regressar ao navio.
They headed back to the shore.
Head back.
The best you can do is head back to the construction site.
Push back. Empurrar de volta contra a parede.
Would you help me push the kitchen table back against the wall, please?
Empurrei para longe.
I pushed him back when he got too close to me.
Empurrei para longe.
I quickly pushed her back from the edge. Push that glass back from the edge of the table.
Estamos expandindo as fronteiras da tecnologia.
We're pushing back the frontiers of technology.
Expandir os limites.
They are willing to push back the limits of what's possible in vehicle design.
Alargar os limites.
We will continue to push back the limits of what is technically possible.
Reagir à alegação.
The company has tried to push back on the claim that it paid no tax. The company has tried to push back on the claim that it paid no taxes. Large banks are pushing back against regulators' plans to toughen rules on these loans.
Reagir.
Teachers who feel they have been criticized are starting to push back. How do we push back against urban poverty without replacing one need with another need?
Foi retardada pelo menos até.
The target date for construction has been pushed back at least until fall.
Adiada.
The deadline has been pushed back 2 weeks. The start of the game was pushed back from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. They decided to push back the release date of their war film as a sign of respect to the victims of the attack. Can I push back our meeting to 27 May?
Posso adiar nossa reunião para o dia 27 de maio? Hand to.
Tim handed the paper to the man.
O Tim entregou o papel para o homem.
He handed the book to Sally. I took a cupcake and then handed the plate to my mom. Hand this to Ed, will you? You'll see him before I do. clerk handed a message to Claire when she stopped at the desk. He picked up the letter and handed it to his mother. She wanted to hand the petition to the president personally. He handed the keys to me. This message was just handed to me.
Clutter up. Os veículos atulhavam o estacionamento. Cluttered up.
The vehicles cluttered up the car park.
Atulhavam.
This room is so impressive, it would be a shame to clutter it up. You know, Dad hates it when you clutter up the house. Too many signs were cluttering up the street corner.
Entulhando.
My desk is cluttered up with papers.
Abarrotar.
I have so many books at home that they're starting to clutter up the place. Every time my kids come home from college for the summer, they clutter up the whole house with their stuff.
Amontoavam.
Heaps of newspapers cluttered the room up and made it a fire hazard. Who cluttered up this house? Please take your belongings with you. You don't need to clutter up my car.
Work for. Trabalhar para.
Mike works for a computer company.
Trabalhei para.
I've worked for the government for the past 10 years. I worked for my father for 3 years before I had enough money to go to college. I never liked working for the government. Too much responsibility with not enough pay. Our firm works for veterans who have been left behind by the system. I spend every Saturday working for those who can't afford legal representation.
Trabalhar por.
I won't work for such a low payment. I offered to work for food since they didn't have any money to pay me. I'm not willing to work for less than $60,000 a year. Our organization works for the humane treatment of animals.
Trabalha em prol do tratamento digno de animais. Trabalha em prol.
We've been working for a peaceful resolution to the conflict for nearly 2 years now. The last administration worked for a trade deal that would benefit both countries.
Aquele truque só funciona para computadores.
That trick only works for computers running their previous operating system. This lotion is meant to treat hives, but it will work for mosquito bites too. The VCR always seems to work for me, but whenever someone else tries it, it freezes up. They should stick with the same strategy because it worked for them last year. Sorry, those times really don't work for me. Some people think I'm weird doing meditation, but it works for me, and that's all that
Dá
matters.
certo para mim.
Unless it has 3 bedrooms, I don't think the house will work for us. I'm not sure that color works for you. We'd be willing to offer your company an extra $2 million to settle the case immediately. Yes, that works for us. 10 a.m. Does that work for you? Yes, that's fine. If you don't mind driving, I can read the map. That works for me.
Por mim, tudo bem. Run off. Nos avisaram para sair.
The neighbors warned us off their land.
Os guardas afastaram todo mundo.
The guards warned off everyone in the vicinity. The farmer warned us off his land when we tried to camp there. The The police warned the intruder off. The police warned the intruder off. We placed a guard outside the door to warn people off until the gas leak could be fixed. We placed a guard outside the door to warn people off until the gas leak could be fixed. A series of flares had been placed along the pavement to warn off motorists. He pressed for a full investigation, but was warned off. She wanted to ask him about it, but the look in his eyes warned her off. The band's management have warned them off late nights. Sam was warned off making trouble. We were warned off buying the house.
Avisados para não comprar a casa.
Doctors should have warned people off using the drug much earlier than they did. The beetles make a screeching noise by rubbing their legs together to warn off predators.
Para afugentar predadores. Afastar rivais.
Some animals mark their territory to warn off rivals. Wolves will often warn newcomers off their pack.
Go away. Go away. Vai embora.
Go away and leave me alone. She angrily told him to go away and stop bothering her.
Go away.
Her nerves gradually went away as the performance continued. After graduating from high school, he went away to college. She's gone away for 6 months, but oddly enough, her boyfriend doesn't seem too unhappy about it.
Viajamos no verão.
We usually go away for the summer.
Viaja.
He goes away on business a lot. They're going away on vacation. I really didn't want to go away this weekend, but it can't be helped. It's possible that we might be going away that weekend. We left our dog in kennels when we went away on holiday. I just wish there was some way to make the pain go away.
Desaparecer.
It was weeks before the bruises went away. The smell went away when he opened the window. The pain should go away in a couple of hours. I can't get that buzzing noise to go away. Where is it coming from? This icon keeps appearing on the screen. How do I make it go away?
Measure up. Estar à altura das expectativas da mãe.
She could never measure up to her mother's expectations. Unfortunately, the production quality didn't measure up to our expectations.
Não está à nossa
Will he measure up to the challenges that lie ahead of him?
ficará à altura.
It was fatiguing sometimes to try to measure up to her standard of perfection. She's always comparing me to other people, and somehow I never measure up.
Para ver como ficava.
We compared the movie we made to some of the other students' films to see how it measured up.
Desempenhava.
The machines are being trialed to see how they measure up.
Me comparo com eles.
How do you think I measure up to them? Last year's intake just didn't measure up.
Como se adequará ao secretário?
How will the Secretary General measure up to his new responsibilities?
Se adequa.
We'll give you a week's trial in the job to see how you measure up. We'll see how he measures up to the job.
Se adequa ao emprego. Ele não conseguia bem se mostrar capaz.
As an administrator, he couldn't quite measure up. I didn't get the job after all. I guess I just didn't measure up.
Se mostraram qualificados.
If new staff measure up after 6 months, they are offered a permanent contract. Measure up any items that you want to keep in the kitchen. We spent the morning measuring up and deciding where the furniture would go.
Medir o quarto.
We need to measure the room up for a new carpet.
Se avaliavam
The
silenciosamente.
two shook hands and silently measured each other up. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, measuring her up. She looked me up and down, silently measuring me up.
Tuck up. Promover, valorizar, ressaltar.
The candidate talked up his own plan to provide coverage for 27 million uninsured Americans.
Exagerar possibilidade.
Politicians accuse the media of talking up the possibility of a riot. He'll be talking up his plans for the economy.
Valorizou.
He talked up the play so much before I went that it didn't end up meeting my expectations.
Promovendo.
Your former manager has been talking you up quite a bit, so we have high hopes for you here.
Valorizando.
They keep talking up the candidate as if he represented a real change. I've been talking the party up all day, trying to get people to come.
Promovendo.
They were talking up their candidate all over the state.
Valorizando.
Economists have been talking up the price of crude oil to avoid profit stagnation in the industry.
Valorizando.
The industry is filled with players who attempt to talk investments up just to line their own pockets.
Apreciar o preço.
The government talked up the price of gas by warning of a possible shortage.
Mentiu. Pretendendo ver.
I've been meaning to see that new movie everyone is talking about.
Pretendia cortar.
Did you mow the lawn? No, I meant to do it yesterday, but I ran out of time.
Eu não tinha intenção.
Did you mean to do that? No, it was an accident. Did you mean to do that? No, it was an accident. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry I broke it. I didn't mean to. I meant to go running this morning, but got up too late. I mean to leave that meeting with a new contract.
Sem querer.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your toe. I've been meaning to ask you if you want to come for a meal next week.
Eu não tinha intenção de aborrecê-la.
I didn't mean to upset you.
Eu não queria que você contasse para
It
ela.
was our secret. I didn't mean for you to tell him.
Não queria que você perdesse seu emprego.
We didn't mean for you to lose your job. I didn't mean for him to go so far.
Hurry up. Apressar.
Do you want to hurry up the application process? Hurry up and finish your soup. If you want tickets, you'd better hurry up. There's only a few left. Try and hurry her up a bit, or we'll be late. Petter saw no reason to hurry the divorce up.
Apressar o divórcio.
She was always telling me to hurry up so we didn't get caught. See if you can hurry things up a little.
Apressar as coisas.
Franklin told Howe to hurry up and take his bath. Otherwise, they'd miss their train. Hurry up or we'll miss the bus.
Onde logo?
Hurry up, we're going to be late.
Apresse-se.
Hurry up, some of us need to get to work. Hurry up and get your things, it's time to go. Hurry up, or you'll be late for school. Hurry up with that coffee, will you? She wished George would hurry up with her cup of tea.
Play at. Brincava.
Ed played at being a pirate. The children were playing at Batman and Robin.
Brincava.
A child playing at shopping, for example, will display early math skills.
Brincando de guerra.
We were still playing at war, dropping leaflets instead of bombs. I think she's just playing at running a business.
Brincando de ser atriz.
She's only playing at being an actress. She's going up to law school next year. You can't just play at being a mother. It's a lifelong commitment.
Aprontando.
She began to wonder what he was playing at. What does he think he's playing at, making the children lie for him? What do you think you're playing at? He said. I can't sell this.
Aprontando.
What is he playing at? What do you think you're playing at?
Aprontando. Man up. Amadurecer.
You need to man up and admit you were wrong.
Amadureça.
You're starting a family. Man up. Man up and be honest. Admit that what you did that night was wrong. It seems he manned up and told the truth. He is the first guy to man up and take responsibility for his mistakes. Man up and start doing the right thing. She told him it was about time to man up.
Amadurecer.
He needs to man up and get over it.
Ser forte.
You need to man up and confront them. Now we've got to man up and take care of ourselves.
Ser forte.
She says she was made to feel that the bullying was her problem. She claims that one of the teachers even told her to man up.
Thin out. Rareando.
Towards the end of town, the houses thinned out.
As casas iam escasseando.
The trees thinned out near the river.
Escassear.
The people in my carriage started to thin out.
Indo embora.
The crowd had thinned out and only a few people were left.
Diminuindo.
Clouds will thin out tonight and we'll have sunny skies.
Reduzindo.
City and state closure orders thinned out the beach crowd.
Thinned out.
The crowd thinned out after the parade was over.
Reduzindo.
Use some sharp scissors to thin out the tree branches.
Diminua.
First, thin out the young plants.
Corte fora.
Thin out half of the old flowered stems.
Muse on about. Ele refletiu sobre o seu relacionamento.
He mused on his relationship with his own father.
Muse on, refletir.
Many of the papers muse on the fate of the president. In its aftermath, he muses on the sort of films he should be making.
Refletir sobre.
He mused on how different his life would have been had he not met Louisa. I start musing on how it is we do find ourselves on the same side. He mused on the history of U.S. leadership on vaccine research, from Salk to Albert Sabin, who developed the oral polio vaccine. I began to muse about the possibility of starting my own business. At breakfast, he allowed himself to muse about his presidency. I mused about what I was going to say on the way over.
Refletir
He
sobre.
kept musing about what might have been. Louis and I would go out for walks and muse about this.
Drive at. Aonde você está tentando chegar?
What are you driving at? I don't see what you're driving at. I can't understand what she's driving at.
Tentando chegar.
I can see what you're driving at. I still couldn't understand what he was driving at. Many candidates don't recognize what the question is driving at.
Está levando.
What exactly are you driving at with a critical statement like that? What are you driving at? What's the point? I could tell Mary was driving at something, but I didn't know what it was. I don't understand what you're driving at. Just tell me what you mean.
Snoop around. Bisbilhotando.
Why are you snooping around my house? If you don't want employers snooping around, change your settings. Please tell me that the cops won't find any incriminating evidence if they start snooping around your office. Sarah's been snooping around lately. I think she's starting to suspect me. I started snooping around the senator's campaign records and discovered a vast conspiracy of fraud and embezzlement. She's the sort of person you can imagine snooping around your room when you're not there. You have no business snooping around my office.
Bisbilhotando.
She's been snooping around, asking questions. Ricardo was the one she'd seen snooping around Kim's hotel room.
Bisbilhotando.
So you support the notion of parents snooping around if they feel there is a reason to do so? They don't like people snooping around what they are doing.
Throw out. Joguei fora.
I've thrown out my old boots. I threw out everything we didn't eat. He threw out the wrapper after he finished eating the candy bar.
Jogou fora.
I can't believe you threw my mother's card out. She threw him out of the house. Anybody who cheats will be thrown out of the team. He was thrown out of 14 schools in 11 years.
Eles as expulsaram.
They threw her out of the club for failing to pay her membership fees.
Ser removido.
The scandal has resulted in the mayor being thrown out of office.
O juiz rejeitou a queixa deles.
The judge threw out their claim.
O testemunho foi
Their
rejeitado.
testimony was thrown out.
Rejeite o caso.
The defense wants the district judge to throw out the case.
O juiz rejeitou o
The
caso.
judge threw the case out due to a lack of evidence. We had to throw out the application after finding out about the prior conviction.
A minha lanterna emitia luz.
My torch threw out enough light to see the path.
Geram bastante calor.
These lamps throw out a lot of heat, so they're perfect for outdoor seating.
A lâmpada dava uma luz fraca.
The lantern threw out a weak light in the darkness.
Esta lanterna dá um facho de luz potente,
That flashlight throws out a powerful beam.
emitindo gases.
There were huge trucks everywhere, throwing out noxious fumes from their exhausts.
O comitê de negociação sugeriu nomes.
The nominating committee threw out names for our consideration.
Deem algumas ideias.
During the meeting, I want everyone to throw out some ideas for how we can improve the product.
Ela sugeriu uma lista de nomes.
She threw a list of names out of people who might be involved with the case.
Ela fez um comentário que
She threw out a remark that utterly confounded him.
Ele dava uma dica de vez em quando.
He would throw out a hint now and then.
O barulho prejudicava sua
The
concentração.
noise threw his concentration out.
Confundidos.
Our calculations of the cost of our trip were thrown out by changes in the exchange rate.
Isso
This
desorganizou.
has completely thrown out our schedule.
Deslocou as minhas costas.
Lifting that sofa threw out my back.
Deslocou as costas.
After working out, she threw her back out.
Deslocou o ombro.
He threw out his shoulder trying to lift that heavy box.
Deslocou o ombro.
I think I threw out my shoulder tossing the football around with the kids.
Soltou a embreagem e pisou no acelerador.
The race car driver threw out the clutch and stepped on the gas. The driver threw the clutch out and sped down the road.
Solte a embreagem de novo.
Now throw out the clutch again.